Hey, welcome to Wicked Weather. I'm Tino Vasco, your host, and we've got quite the show for you tonight. We had a little bit of technical difficulties as far as Skype was going, so I'm a little bummed about that, but we got to do it through the phone system. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I love the weather since I was 7 years old. I got a lot of background behind it, and growing up in 1 year in Marlboro, we had a blizzard, and that's what really made me fall in love with the weather. As far as Mother Nature and the power of Mother Nature goes, I grew on throughout my childhood. My friends would tell me in school and on the bus, is it going to snow? Are we going to have a storm? And I would say, yep, no school tomorrow. We're all good. We're going to miss school. So we'd all go out, sledding the night before, and we'd have no school the next day. So it was great. And I just moved up through as I got older. I'd have friends tell me that, hey, you know what? Why are you outside talking to the clouds, Peter? I'm always outside talking to the clouds because I want to bring the storms into me. So that's the way I can focus with Mother Nature and the weather. I'm a really big weather enthusiast. We have a great show for you tonight, guys. I have Dave Marciano on the show, and we're going to talk a lot about weather hazards at sea. He may even take in questions about tuna fishing or fishing, whatever you might have. I already see that we have a few callers on the line. So I'm going to bring in Dave Marciano in just a minute. But first I want to thank our sponsors for having this show, Rolling Hills Asylum and Fort William Henry up in Lake George, New York. Beautiful areas. Batavia is Rolling Hills Asylum, and Lake George, New York, Fort William Henry. Unbelievable up there. I actually did a Paracon up there as well. Also want to thank all the shows on DPM Radio. Cisco, The Wicked Edge, Everything Paranormal, Let's Talk Ghosts, Into the Unknown Realm, The Veil of Darkness, Paranormal Connection, Naked, Carrots Don't Scream, Book Chat Deal with Jason Stanton, The All Paranormal with New England Ghosts, and The Darker Side of Paranormal and Paranormal Circus. So with all that being said, I'm really hoping that you enjoy the show. This is my first show. Getting the nerves out, and I'm going to bring on Captain Dave Marciano. Let me tell you a little bit about Dave first. Dave has the hard merchandise. He does do chartering, and fishing trips, and I'm sure he'll get that all information to you. He's been seen on the National Geographic Channel, Wicked Tuna, and for myself, I think Dave's the whole show. Without Dave, I don't think you have Wicked Tuna. So without further ado, let's welcome Captain Dave Marciano to the show.
How's it going?
To the show.
How's it going, man? How are you tonight? Good.
Good. So tell me, what's it like going out into the ocean? We don't see what actually goes on land when you're out there in the ocean as far as rough seas and weather goes.
Well, it's always changing, that's for sure. We do work in the environment. I heard you mention that, how much you like to watch the weather change, and we certainly see a lot of that in the course of a multi-day fishing trip. We can go from a day when we leave and it's flat, calm, like a tabletop out there, to, be having 6 or 8 or 10-foot seas, and that can change in a matter of hours, too, especially when we're fishing in some of the more notorious areas, like the northern edge of George's Bay.
And how far is George's Bay?
From Gloucester, it's about 160 miles to that northern edge, which is where we fish for giant bluefin tuna occasionally near the end of the summer and the early fall.
Wow, that's pretty far out. So that takes you about close to 2 hours to get out that far?
It takes my boat about 18 hours.
18 hours? Wow.
Well, yeah, we're a slow boat.
That is a small boat. That is a small boat.
When we pull off one of them George's trips, it's basically a day of steaming. We'll fish for 3 days and, sometimes 4 days. And, a day to come home. And after that, on our boat, that's pretty much the limit out there. It's 4 guys on a boat with no shower for 5 days. It's definitely time to come home.
I would expect. Now, when you're out there going out in the small boat and you get the swells, the surf, the breakers, tell me, what's the biggest breakers you've actually experienced going out that far? And the crew out there, starting to come back in because, you know what, fishing we can put on hold for one time. It's too stormy out here. We're going to pull it back in.
Yeah, and, normally, we make our best judgment based on the weather tools that we have available to look at weather. We certainly would never go out in anything that was unsafe. But that being said, on occasion, especially a place like George's, you're a full day steaming from home. Sometimes, if we get some crap coming, some nasty weather, we simply got to sit through it for a day, because it's a day steaming home. So you basically ride it out till the weather improves enough so you can get back to the business of fishing, and when that happens on a trip like that, you're probably talking, 24 hours or more of, basically driving the boat and paying attention to what's going on, through seas that can be 12 to 14 or even 16 feet. And we simply ride it out for the night, the day and the night, basically one wave at a time. And, then when it lays down enough again, we'll start fishing again. But, again, that being said, we would never, especially in my boat, I certainly wouldn't rush out there to be in that kind of weather. But, the weather tools we have are you know all about it. We can make a good guess at what's going to happen, but ultimately we deal with Mother Nature, and every now and then she throws you an unexpected curveball.
Does she? She does that so many times out there in the ocean. We've had a lot of boats go down, which is, scary for a fisherman like yourself going out there. Can you tell us and the listeners what the most hair-raising experience for you as a fisherman, Dave, was when you went out to sea in probably one of the worst storms?
Yeah, again, it was the first time I had this boat that you see on the show, the merchandise. I owned it for about 6 months. And again, we had planned, we were fishing down the Great South Channel off Cape Cod. We're probably 45 or 50 miles up from Cape Cod. And, the full winds were forecast to get up to 30 knots, which is about borderline for my boat. But ultimately, during the night, the winds kicked up to about 55, or I think even briefly it blew 60 knots. So that was the type of thing where, I hadn't planned on being there, but all of a sudden you're in this situation and your focus goes to, okay, now how do we make it through? And you certainly got to, stay calm and keep your wits about you. And again, it was a matter of, just staying up all night and riding out the wind, one wave at a time, because, as you probably are well aware, and maybe some of the audience isn't, it's the wind that, drives the waves. The more wind there is, the higher the seas are going to get, and the longer distance that wind has to push the waves, the bigger those seas are going to get. So, we made it through that night. That night, I believe 2 other boats went down. One of them went down on anchor. That was a 55-footer. My boat's 35 feet. And another one was a 70-footer. So that's when I realized, again, I had just bought the boat. I owned it for a little less than 6 months. And I got myself in that situation, not willingly. It was just the way the thing went down. And we made it through that night with those other boats going down. So that's when I realized what a great boat that is that I do have.
Wow. What a story that was. I mean, I can just imagine, and I pity you guys when you go out there when they're that rough out there. As us being on the mainland, when we have a wall line come in, it's totally different from what we experience on the mainland than what you fishermen experience out on the ocean. Now, how much of a heads up do you guys have when a squall line is coming in, let's say off of Massachusetts into the harbor? How much warning do you guys get? Do you get warning from NOAA, or do you have NOAA radio on your boat?
Yeah, they will notify us. The nice thing about a squall is, yes, they can be very intense, but it's usually short-lived, you know. That's why it's called a squall. You know what I mean? It's a quick, fast-moving, wicked windstorm. And, squalls aren't so bad. I mean, sometimes, they're a little hair-raising when they involve a lot of lightning. As I like to say to my crew, when they see all this mess coming down on us, there's no need to worry, boys. Lightning's only dangerous if you're on a boat. And, but again, it's usually a fast-moving, pretty intense, but it's over pretty quickly, So at least the squall is short-lived.
Right.
It's much better than having a long, windy night.
Exactly. As far as lightning safety goes out in the ocean, what would you suggest to boaters or sailors or anybody that's out in the ocean during a lightning storm, how to protect themselves? I don't know myself if boats are protected from lightning being on the water, but if lightning strikes the water close to your boat, can that set off an electrical charge that will go right through the boat? And
like our boats, it could. And I've been on boats that are struck by lightning, and it basically destroys your electronics if you have any of them on. So the first thing, like when I see lightning or a thunderstorm coming, I shut down all my electronic gear. Usually like my boat, it's grounded to the engine. So I haven't been hit by lightning with this boat, but I've been on other boats that have been hit by lightning. And again, the routine casualty is your electronics. Anything electronic gets pretty much fried. But you can prevent that if you have your electronics shut down, all powered down. And then while I was on one of my other boats, Angelica Joseph, I had a big bronze rudder, and we had, it had a big stainless steel steering wheel. Now, we had a lightning hit the water about 100 feet from the boat, and not only was the sound pretty much deafening, but the shock from that, pretty much translated right through that rudder, right through the wheel, and knocked me right in my ass.
Wow. And what happens when most of your when the lightning does hit the boat or hits the water and it knocks out your navigation, how do you guys find a way to get back to the mainland?
Well, then let's go back to old school. You got a compass. We all have a compass, and, as long as you take care of your compass and remember how to use it, it's still, even with all the fancy electronics, you take a compass course out, and you take ultimately steering a compass course home, even though a lot of guys, including myself, you get spoiled by these fancy electronics with the plotters, and it shows the boat on the map and makes it all nice, easy peasy. But, just always, and especially, for someone like myself who's been fishing Middlebank and Jeffries and Chili's for quite a few years now, and there's, let's be clear, there's many guys like me. We all pretty much know the compass course home from any given spot we're fishing, pretty much out of the back of our head, you know what I mean? It's been pretty much drilled into it. Well, when you go fishing out there 300-plus days a year, even 20, 30 miles out on Jeffries or Middlebank, it's still our backyard, and there's a ton of guys like me out there,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I went out there, I'd probably be seasick in a matter of seconds. I get seasick just in the harbor. I don't know if it's the wave, if the boats just stop and it just rocks a little bit. I don't know. I got to take some of that Dramamine and, maybe get over my fear that way.
Yeah.
You get a lot of guys in your crew that end up getting seasick, and will you call it a trip, or you just say, no, fuck it, we'll stay out there and we'll finish the job?
when it comes to employees, pretty much those guys are going to have to tough it out. But we do a lot of charters these days, especially obviously because of the show. The charter end of my business has exploded. So, on that occasion, if we have clients who are seasick, that's a different story. I like to, treat them to an enjoyable experience. I'm not going to keep them out there and torture them.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to have a bunch of sick guys on your boat, and then you got a big mess to clean up. Nobody wants that. You know what I mean? I've been out on a Yankee fleet before, and believe me, in high school, I was the same one that did that, and I was going right over the side. You know what I mean? So it was pretty. It was pretty crazy, but I love fishing.
Don't be shy. Step to the rail and let it fly.
I like that. That's like when thunder roars, go indoors. I like that. I'm going to use that, Dave. That's an excellent one. That's an excellent phrase. I love that. Mr. Marciano, how did you come about? Did you ever grow up loving the weather? Was it something as being a fisherman, or that got you involved as a fisherman? Is it something, because I read something about that you're always out inside different elements of the weather, which is great, for your career, what you love to do.
Unlike yourself, you seem to have a passion for the weather, and that's really cool. My interest in the weather was born out of being a fisherman. Fishermen, again, and there's many guys like me, in a literal sense, we live and die by the weather. We're always planning our trips around weather. We need to go fishing as often as possible, and, especially winter fishing, that certainly is weather dependent. We have small windows in the winter and late fall where the weather is going to be, safe enough for us to go fishing. So in our own little right, I make no claims to be a weatherman, but I've certainly, through the fact of being a fisherman, and a lot of what I know about the weather, I learned from the older fishermen, who I fished with when I was younger. The little bits and pieces I know, part of it comes from experience, and a good majority of it, though, comes from fishing with those old timers. They knew what they were doing.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, that's a great point that you bring up. I mean, being a fisherman, you're always aware of the weather, out in the ocean. So you have a big. It's almost like being a weatherman over the water. You know what to expect. You've been out there for so many times. Let me ask you something, Dave. These crazy tornado chasers. The weather's been crazy lately. Out in the Midwest, we've had twin tornadoes out in Nebraska, in Colorado. Yeah. The last few days up here in New England, we've had severe weather. Arthur, what was your first thoughts when Arthur formed off the southeast U.S. coast, just like that, with just a cold front, this so early in the season, to have a hurricane, I would say almost a major hurricane. I think it was almost a Category 2, right off the New England coastline. What was going through your head then?
I don't know. I mean, it was to me, it was weather. That's what happens. It's just like I got a kick out of it this winter. When we shot the Southern show, Wicked Tuna, North versus South, when that came about pretty quick, and when we had to drive the boat to North Carolina to shoot down there, I happened to leave right when that whole, with the boat, and it takes 5 days of steaming and good weather to get down there, but we left during that quote-unquote polar vortex. And I got a chuckle listening to all the talk about that. Now, it did take us 2 weeks to do what it should have taken us 5 days because of that severe weather. But, all over the news, they're calling it a polar vortex. And, all I could think of is the old timers that I fished with just called it weather. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this winter was anything epic. It was simply weather like we used to have quite frequently, but I guess everybody forgot about it.
Right. I mean, weather can be very unpredictable, and like I said, with tropical storm or hurricane Arthur that formed so quick season, does that go to tell you that fishing on hold come late August, September, as far as the storm pressure up in the North Atlantic?
Yeah, I mean, I think they predicted, an average hurricane season. And, again, there's nothing I can't do to stop, a hurricane, except like the rest of us, we can get out of its way when it comes. And, take safety precautions as best as we have the ability to do so. That being said, we don't look forward to it, because the one thing, hurricanes or a storm like that can have an interesting impact at fishing, and it's been my experience that, if fishing is good, if we're having good fishing, a hurricane is a great way to ruin it, because it changes the water. It turns over the water, which, upsets the environment that the fish are living in. And, one thing fish are is they're not random. They seek out locations where conditions are ideal for them to thrive. And, that constitutes water temperature a lot of times. So when you have a storm like a hurricane, you mix up the water temperature and, the fish scatter in all different directions, and then we're going to find them all over again.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, as far as nor'easters go that you've experienced, were you born and raised here in New England? You didn't grow up in Gloucester, right?
No, I did not grow up in Gloucester. I grew up in Beverly, Mass. But ultimately, I took to fishing when I was about 11 years old. No one in my family fished. My father sold insurance, so I was kind of like a little bit of a black sheep in Gloucester, for that, because there's a lot of fishing families in Gloucester with a long history of fishing. But, those guys were certainly welcoming to a new guy who was willing to work hard. So that's why I always thought Gloucester was cool. And, ultimately I wound up graduating from Gloucester High School. So I guess you'd call me a half-breed.
Well, I'll tell you a story about Gloucester High School, Dave. I actually had to go to summer school in order to get my degree, which was probably the worst thing missing my whole summer, but it was worth actually going out in the field in my class. I didn't put school first, which I probably should have. But we learn our lessons, and this is what comes of it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure.
Dave, let me ask you something. Do you recall the February 2012 nor'easter? Actually, February 25th, 2012.
No, I don't remember anything particularly. I mean, it was another nor'easter, right?
Well, that was the one that there was an eye off the coast of the Atlantic coast, actually off Cape Ann. The eye went southwest. The eye went southwest through Boston Harbor. And I saw that on radar, and I'm thinking to myself, no Mets out there are predicting this. I go, look, I'm going to call my friend Matt Noyce at NECN, and I did. And I says, look, you got to get a crew down here to Bass Rocks because the roofs are going to blow off the hotels. And wouldn't you know, Dave, that night we went from sustained 30 miles an hour to 75 sustained, and we got to 110 miles per hour that night, and it blew the roof of the Bass Rocks Motel off. I don't know if you recall that night, but I'm sure there was a lot of damage in Beverly as well.
Yeah, no, I can't recall offhand. I guess, I don't know. We have so much crappy weather. Yeah. It seems like there's one after another some years.
I know, but if you really look at it, what's going on around the world, we've actually been pretty fair off here in New England as far as crazy weather goes.
We have. We certainly have. We've been lucky as a year around the world, but again, that's certainly evidence of how things do change. And like people are fond of saying, especially when we're having discussions on what's going on in the fishing industry, that, we've never seen conditions like we've had the past few years, as far as water temperatures and number of storms and number of hurricanes. But, that's pretty much a fallacy. We got into quite a heated discussion and it's one of the issues about codfish here in New England. And, you know, it was pointed out by someone other than myself who really did the research, but we basically had the same water temperatures and the same amount of storms, these hurricanes in particular, you know, during the period from like 1952, 53, 54, and 55, which is, you know, quite a bit before this whole debate about, you know, global warming and, you know, the fact that it's creating conditions that, you know, never existed before when, you know, at least if you look back in history, it certainly has at times, you know, been created before.
Like the 1950s. See, Dave, one thing that I don't agree with is global warming. I believe our world goes into the climate changes happen maybe once every 30 years or so. If you look back in the 1950s, we had those crazy, the double hurricanes that came up the coastline and hit New England. Off that, I don't remember but do you remember those names, the hurricanes? I don't remember the names. I'm not.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, but we had back-to-back hurricanes, and that was in the 1950s. And if we looked at last year's hurricane season, it was supposed to be very aggressive, and we were supposed to get numerous amount of hurricane activity in the Atlantic. And it was actually pretty quiet because the air off of Africa. And what that does is there's a role in of tropical development off of the African coastline. Verde season. So there, like you were saying, when we had the one off of southeast U.S. coast, that formed right here in the United States off the coastline waters because the waters are very warm down there. How warm are the waters out where you go fishing right now, would you say? Are they in the 50s or so?
Oh, the water temperatures? Is that what?
Yeah.
Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
The temperatures? Yeah. Right now, the water temperature has been, you know, averaging between, you know, 58 in the morning, right at first light. And then by the end of the day, it'll rise up, you know, on a sunny day to 62 or even 64. And then if we get, you know, an event like the storm, it mixes up that thin layer of warm water that's on the surface. And now today it seemed to be pretty uniform at 58 or 59 degrees.
Wow. Okay. So, how far off the ocean? It depends on the current of the water. If the Gulf Stream can get in, with the warmer waters up that way, which is very rare at this time.
Yeah.
How can they get up? Can they get 375 out there?
Well, you know, normally that Gulf Stream travels up the edge of the continental shelf,
right.
Which, you know, up here is, almost 200 miles offshore. And, you know, down in the North Carolinas where we're fishing, you know, the edge, it drops off to 6,000 feet, about 35 or 40 miles offshore, which is why the fishing can be real good down there because you do have that Gulf Stream. But in comparison, like last year, because we had such a mild winter and then we had a quick heat up in the spring, the temperature out in the Gulf of Maine where we're fishing now, right about now, it was about 72 degrees, and it hung between 72 and 74 till, you know, almost early September, and which is completely unheard of, and that was throughout the Gulf of Maine. And, you know, that had a huge negative impact on the bluefin tuna fishing. You know, we know those fish, you know, the ideal range is between 51 and 61 degrees is really ideal for tuna fishing. And, you know, on occasion there'll be in some hotter water, but when the water gets that hot, the fish just bug out. And I believe it had the same impact on stripers too. You know, the guys complained that striper fishing wasn't that great last year, and you know, if the water is too hot, the fish don't look at you know, geographical lines or international lines. They go where the conditions suit them ideally.
Wow. So, as far, all right, this is like a tough question. There's a lot of beach goers, Good Harbor, all up and down the East Coast. We'll say Cape Cod. They're really concerned about these great whites that start to show up off our shores. Is weather play a role with that, Dave? Or again, is
no,
water temperature?
I don't believe so at all. The white sharks are here for one reason. Number one, they've been protected under the Endangered Species Act for, I think, almost 2 decades now. So we're not allowed by law. They're a good eating shark, but we're not allowed to harvest them. So if you catch one, you got to release it. And number two, we have a seal population in the Gulf of Maine that is roughly 300% what its natural carrying capacity normally is. Now, I know this through our discussions on management of groundfish like cod and haddock, because part of the discussion turns to predator-prey relationships on groundfish, and when it comes to predators of cod and haddock, one of the primary predators are these seals. Now, what's interesting is, so you have this enormous population of seals, you have a rebuilding stock of great white sharks that for 20 years has been increasing in size, not decreasing, and these seals are the favorite food of great white sharks. So, if you look at those beaches down the Cape, there's tens of thousands of seals, and it's completely unnatural abundance of seals. And these sharks are here for one thing. Those seals, they're Scooby snacks for them great white sharks. You know what I mean? The best advice I could suggest is don't swim if there's a lot of seals around, because then you're just mimicking a seal. Those sharks are here to eat.
So you must like Scooby, huh? Scooby snacks. I love that. That's fun. I go down to Good Harbor Beach. I'll take a dip at night when it's up. I'll go first. I live up in Beach. I'm not afraid at all. Listen, Dave, I got questions coming in right now for you. One question is, with the weather being, the camera team keep their equipment for filming on your boat?
Oh, that's their problem, and cameras do get wiped out, right? And unfortunately, I think on my boat we have a history of these cameras are worth $10,000 a piece, or $12,000 or $15,000 a piece, and I think out of all the boats in the fleet, we've ruined the most aboard my boat. But.
I got another question for you, Dave. What got you into this field? What was your most memorable moment at sea? What was your most intense experience? Let's just skip that. Actually, let's go. How long does it take to film an episode while you're out at sea, actually on the boat?
Well, there's no set thing. Look, when they come and they begin filming, we've got the cameras on the boat for a couple of months, and they film everything we do. When we're out fishing, they're filming around the clock. They've got mounted cameras, that just keep changing out the memory cards, and it captures everything we do. And then that goes to L.A., the minute we get in from any given trip, it's all downloaded and sent off to L.A., and the editing process begins. So, it's like the debate a lot is whether it's scripted. And not that we do is scripted, but it is edited, right? Because we're tuna fishing over the period of a few months, and we're creating a 1-hour TV show out of it. So a lot of the stuff you see, remember, the editors are kind of picking out the epic highs and the epic lows. They're not going to show you the 20 hours that I'm sitting there with my finger in my nose waiting for a tuna fish to show up on the screen. They're going to show you the 10 minutes that the fish is actually there.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, I got another question for you. I don't know. This is, I guess, a funny one. Have you ever fished with Linda Greenlaw?
No, I never have.
No. I fished with Linda Greenlaw. Let's see what we got here. More questions. I think actually we have a caller coming in. Let's see if we can take that. Let's see if put that through. While we're waiting for the caller, I'm going to put it right through now.
What's being told her, sort of.
Hey, welcome to the Wicked Web Show with Pete and my guest, Dave Marciano. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello? Okay, well, that didn't work out. Sorry about that, Dave.
That's all right.
Connection. Let's get back to, I have a funny question. I don't know if this is funny or not, but I think it's funny. Like I was going back to those crazy baskets that was going to chase money. But, I mean, myself, I'm a storm chaser. I do chase. It's really hard to chase New England because we have the hills. But have you experienced being not out there on a cigarette boat or a long boat chasing storms out at sea or anything crazy like that?
No, I can't say that I ever have. And I certainly hope I wouldn't. Again, our experience with the weather, and any fisherman will tell you, we have the utmost respect, for what the seas can do to you and throw at you. And it's really not a joking matter, when it comes down to it. We take it very seriously, but ultimately, due to the nature of our business, at times all of us fishermen get ourselves in weather that we'd really rather not be in. But again, it's situational. If you're 20 hours from home and there's going to be a squall coming through, it's you can't just snap your fingers and be on land. So there's one thing you do is you ride it through. You ride it through the storm. You ride it through the squall. And you really try and keep your wits about it. But it's something at least I take very seriously. And I don't know what I'd think if I saw somebody out there intentionally chasing the severe weather, given what, I know full well what could happen, if they find that weather that they're looking for.
Absolutely. I got a question for you. Would you be willing to go on a storm chase with myself sometime this summer if conditions warranted and you didn't have like a charter or anything like that?
No. I have no desire to go looking for bad weather. I've seen enough of it myself.
That's okay. Okay,
if you want me to be honest, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. We have another caller. Let's see who we got coming on now. Hello, you're on with Wicked Weather with Pete and Dave Marciano. My guest, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Peter, it's Scott Ryan from Marco Island, Florida. How are you?
Scott, how are you? I'm really good.
Good, doing well. Good to get through.
Oh, that's awesome. You got a question for my guest, Dave Marciano?
Yes, I do.
How's it going, Scott?
Good. How are you doing, Dave?
Good.
We were wondering, we see on the TV show you guys make so much money during the short season. What do you and your crew do the rest of the season to supplement your income?
We pretty much fish year-round. And again, the show maybe is a little less misleading at that point, but, simply put, tuna season is basically a quarter of what I do with my boat. You know what I mean? The boat's going to be paid. I get kids to support. The bill's going to be paid year-round, and my boat strictly goes fishing, whether it's gill netting or long lining for caught in the attic in the winter, or, in the spring we'll pump some lobster traps out. Now, that being said, obviously, because of the show, a big quarter of my year is my charter season. That's obviously increased exponentially, and I'm a fisherman. I take advantage of opportunity when it presents itself.
Cool. We love the show. Good to talk to you, Peter and Dave.
Hey,
all
Scott,
right. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.
It.
All right.
All right. We have another caller, Dave. Wow. This was a good show. We'll see who's calling now. It takes a little minute.
Yep.
See what we got coming in. Getting a little technical difficulty, but while that's going on, they hung up. Okay, they hung up. So Dave, I mean, it's just amazing what you guys actually go through, the work that you do out there. And there's got to be stress levels out at sea when you're out there. I'm just kind of curious, when you're under so much stress out there, how many cigarettes do you smoke out there on the boat? And does it cost you all?
Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate, and it's not something I'm proud of, right? But I smoke a couple packs of butts a day, and I wish I could quit, especially because of the show.
Yeah. Okay, we got another caller. Go ahead, Tammy. Put the call through. Hi, you're on Wicked Weather with Pete and my guest Dave Marciano.
Is this Pete?
This is Pete. Who's this? And where you calling
from? Brother. It's your brother from out in California. How are you, buddy?
How are you? How's San Diego?
Fantastic, man. I'm just listening to I'm listening to everything, and just I think you and Dave are having a great show, man. It's a good time. Awesome. Glad to hear everything.
Can you
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Do you have a question? We can absolutely. Do you have a question for Dave, Jerry?
It's not so much a question. I got to tell Dave. I mean, you guys make a fantastic show. Out here in Cali, we're 3,000 miles away, and I have a ton of folks that watch the show, and it's made it. They enjoy it. They're having a blast because you guys are hilarious. Enjoying what you do. That's the biggest part about it. You guys love it, and that's what's important.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because it's funny, when this all started, I was like, because they said, hey, we're going to film this, and, it might last 1 year, it might not go anywhere else, and that's where I thought it would go, because I certainly didn't think what I do is very interesting, but, I got to give credit to the editors. Pilgrim Production, I think we play our part as participants, but it's really the editing team out in L.A. and Pilgrim Productions itself. They're what makes it good TV. You know what I mean?
Yep. Hey, listen, we grew up. You're raised in Beverly, right? You live in Beverly?
Yeah.
There's no place in the world like where we grew up. So, and whenever we have the conversation, and we start to talk about it, Gloucester or fishing or the perfect storm, whatever it is, it's so different than anybody has ever understood. And you guys live it. It's awesome, man. You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. They're doing a great job.
I got to give it a little thumbs up. My fiance over here is saying she loves your nephew.
Oh yeah, Jay's great. Yeah.
Wait, is he still
you guys
single?
make a good crew. So Dave,
we want to answer that show. Jerry, thank you. I really appreciate it, buddy. All right, are you there, Dave? We got another call.
Yeah.
You're just we're on fire tonight. Go ahead. Let's see who we got calling in now. And like my brother was saying, the show is unbelievable. You guys go through. There must be so many takes. It's so much time put in, and I think helicopters sometimes fly. They're also doing filming at the same time. Hello, caller, are you on the line? No. So you guys also have the helicopters that fly over and also take pictures at the same time? That the crews can't get on the boat?
Yeah. That's pretty cool. When we do that, it's usually 2 days of shooting with those helicopters, and it's quite expensive, but it's a pretty neat experience, because that's high-tech cameras. The camera that's in that helicopter is worth about $800,000, and it's mounted. It looks like R2-D2 mounted upside down, on the front of that helicopter. And so when we do those shots, those are the specialty shots. They'll have us steaming into the sunset. They'll have us out there, and we'll sit like we are fishing, because remember, these are the shots that place the viewer aboard the boat. All the filming you see aboard the boat, a lot of times there's no other boats around. So you wouldn't have the footage of, what's the hard merchandise look like from the outside. So it's on these days when we do the aerials is where they get all those cool shots of, okay, now we're going aboard the hard merchandise, and they'll show you that cool aerial shot as they, zoom in on our boat, and then boom, they show you and Jay and I, you know.
Absolutely. Dave, I have another question for you from a guest from Karen Van Stammen. Question to you is, did you know the crew who was lost on the Andrea Gale? And if so, I'm trying to read this. Did you ever fish with them? Many of the fishermen sought after tuna swords. I don't know if that makes sense, but did you ever fish with them?
So what was it again?
Okay, the question to you is, did you know the crew who was lost on the Andrea Gale? And if so, did you ever fish with them? Many of the fishermen sought after tuna and swordfish.
No, I never did fish with them, but I knew one of the guys pretty well, Dave Sullivan. I knew him in the fact that, you know, him and I used to, you know, back in the day, I was in my 20s, we hung out at the Crow's Nest a lot, and, you know, we guzzle a few Budweisers together on occasion.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, the Crow's Nest is a really good spot for fishermen to go and do, you know, have a nice trip after a long day at sea. What's the longest trip you've actually been on out at sea? How many days? We're talking like.
Well, you know, my boat, you know, the max is 4 or 5 days. You know, but when I fished out of Key West in my youth, you know, it wasn't on my boat; it was working on deck. You know, we did 10 to 12-day trips down there. Big boat dragging in Gloucester here. You know, some of the boats in Boston. You know, I've done 10 or 12-day trips there too, even 15 days.
Wow, that's 15 days. I think I would be really sick by 15 days. I'd probably be sick after 3 days.
For guys like us, and any of these guys will tell you, you know, even a 15-day trip, because we're generally, you know, working around the clock. You know, for me, the phenomenon was it would seem like one long day. You know what I mean? When we come back to shore, you know, it kind of all blends together for us because, you know, we might work, you know, around the clock if we're out there fishing. So it just kind of blends into this one big, long day.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I mean, I give you guys so much. Dave, honestly, I probably couldn't last more than 4 hours out there. I don't know how you guys keep your stomach that with the waves and the swells. And what makes you so used to it? Are you just born with it? Is it something you're born with?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, nobody in my family fished, and I've never been seasick in my life. You know, I've been rumsick a few times in my youth, and you know that's when you go out and you know, in my 20s here, we'd drink all night and then jump the boat. And you know, rumsick is different. When you're rumsick, once you're purged, you're good to go. You know, when you get seasick, it usually doesn't go away until you get back to land.
Yeah. I got another question for you. This one's from Mark. They want to know, have you ever feared for the state of your crew, and if so, when and when was it?
It was, that would be, you know, January 13th, 2003, when I lost the first boat I owned, the Angelica Joseph. We sank about 24 miles at sea out on Jeffrey's Ledge. You know, it was the middle of January. It was blowing a gale. We were lugging the fish. That was an old wooden boat. You know, but I bought that boat back at the time. It was the first boat I bought. Remember, I did this old school, you know, nobody gave me nothing. I worked on crew. I ran somebody else's boat for a period of years. I saved up my money, bought my own boat. I had that boat for about 10 years. I made some good money, caught a lot of fish with that boat, but we opened up a plank on that day. And, you know, at the time I had two people fishing with me. And, you know, both of them were younger kids. You know, they're 23 and I think 26. It wasn't Jay, my nephew, the guy you see in the boat. But, you know, literally what went through my mind was, you know, I didn't want to have to talk to anybody else's mother. You know what I mean? Because I had these two young cats fishing on the boat, right? And they were good, solid people. So, you know, my big concern was, you know, let's do this right. I may lose the boat. But, you know, as long as we plan God's right, we have all the safety equipment. We're required by law to do safety drills by the U.S. Coast Guard. And I used to grumble about all that stuff all the time, but after that day and that event, I did lose the boat, and it was the middle of January. It was 5 degrees out in the morning when we left. But you know what? We're all here to tell the story. So all that safety training and the safety drills paid off.
Yeah, I can see, and that's a very respectful captain that looks over his crew first always, before anything else. And if worse came to worse and your boat was going down, would you really stay on the boat and go down with it, or would you jump off on the raft?
Well, I mean, obviously you wouldn't unless there was a necessity to do so to ensure everybody else got off safe, I suppose, I mean, but, as long as everybody else is going to get off the boat safely, I'm not going to go down with the ship just because the ship's going down.
Right.
So at some point, basic human instinct kicks in. But, at the same point, I'm not going to be the first one off the boat and leave. If I get a charter, if the boat's filled with a bunch of clients, you're not going to see something goes wrong. I can guarantee you I'm not going to be the first one off the boat.
Absolutely. Dave, we're going to have to wrap up the show, but before we go, is there anything you want to put out there to the listeners where they get in touch with you as far as your chartering goes, or
sure.
If you want to put your Facebook or Twitter or anything?
Sure. Yeah, make sure you follow us. You can follow me, Dave Marciano, on Facebook, or you can follow the boat, FV Hard Merchandise. And that would be F/V Hard Merchandise on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Captain Marciano. I also have an Instagram account if you're into pictures. Again, that's at Captain Marciano. And if you're interested in fishing trips or your hard merch shirts or hats or even the exclusive Captain Marciano bobblehead, please visit us at website fvhardmerchandise.com.
That's great, Dave. Actually, you know what? I did think I want a bobblehead, right, Marcy? Yes, definitely not a bobblehead. Dave, thank you so much for coming on the show and being a great sport. We've learned so much tonight about the weather hazards at sea. We've learned stuff about, anything, tuna fishing, everything that you do, and that you're all good at. I thank you for coming on the show. Good
luck with the show, man. I hope it takes off for you. It works out real well.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the 4th of July weekend, sir.
All right, you too, man. Thank you.
All right, well, that was Dave Marciano. Great guest. I'm so glad we had him on tonight. It was a phenomenal show. Dave is a great guy. If anybody, like I said, knows the weather at sea, it's Dave Marciano. And really, like he said, guys, find him on Facebook. Find him at Dave Marciano on Facebook or on Twitter at Captain Dave Marciano. Also, I believe he has Angelica Fisheries Incorporation. He's got the charter. You can sign up for a charter. I don't know the pricing, but you'll have to go to their website. And I'm telling you, it's quite the experience you ever get to be out there with this guy. He's a really great guy at heart. I became friends with him on Twitter, and hopefully someday, I'll get him to go racing with me. Even though he did say no, right, Marcy? He did say no. He did say no, but I'm hoping to get him out there sometime. So I want to thank all you listeners that came on tonight to listen to the show and support my debut. At first, I was a little bit nervous, but those nerves left. Now that we got the first show through, we're going to be flying out through the second and third show. Next coming up will be Anthony Siciliano from the South Shore, and that will be next Saturday at 8 p.m. And we're going to talk primarily winter storm, tropical storms. Let me tell you a little bit about Anthony. Anthony is the man. He is on the game. He knows something about the weather. He puts up an accumulation map. He doesn't change it, and it always works out. I have so much respect for Anthony. And also I'm hoping to have on that same night is Tim Kelly from NECN. I don't know if Tim can do it due to working on the weekends. But we have plenty of great guests coming up. And, again, I want to thank all you listeners for coming tonight. It was a great show, and we're going to do it all again next Saturday. Again, we'll have Anthony, and that's really about it. So we got 5 minutes, and I'm really the show's over. So I'm going to say good night. We ended a little early. It was a good show. I will see you guys next Saturday. I want to wish you all a great end of the 4th of July. Love you all. Good night.